Your course content does a good job introducing the big questions that psychology asks. I wanted to take a few minutes to introduce what psychology looks like here at UMaine. We have faculty that take on many of the different perspectives described in your text. For example, Shannon McCoy, Molly Rubin, and I are social psychologists. So we study how the presence of other people influences how folks think, feel, and behave. Emily Haig, Faiza Ahmed, Rebecca Schwartz-Mehta, Rebecca McCauley, Cindy Erdley, and Doug Nangle are all clinical psychologists. They're focused on research in disorders and treatment of those disorders. Thane Freemal, Ben Genther, and Alan Cobo-Lewis take on the biological perspective, while Sean L. studies category learning from a cognitive approach. We have world-class researchers working from diverse perspectives on basic and applied research questions. And this semester, we're going to be covering these different areas of psychology: social, cognitive, clinical, biological, in a bunch of detail. This unit is an introduction. So I want you to take the time to try to understand these different perspectives and how different perspectives might think about the same kinds of problems, just in a different way. So for example, psychologists might be interested in why people abuse alcohol. Clinical psychologists might approach the question by focusing on the causes and the consequences of abuse with an eye on how to help people who struggle with alcohol abuse. Whereas a biological psychologist might be interested in how people metabolize alcohol, or even the genes associated with alcohol seeking or alcohol avoidance, maybe even using an animal model like in mice. A cognitive psychologist might be interested in how people learn to use and abuse alcohol, and a social psychologist might be interested in the context where people are most likely to abuse alcohol. All of these different perspectives are psychology. They use the scientific method to understand how people think, feel, and behave. But they do so from different and particular orientations, and so together they provide a diverse and more complete picture of the phenomenon at hand. And that's why these diverse perspectives are useful. In our department, we have two different PhD programs, and our graduate students are our colleagues here in research, and they teach many of our classes. Our clinical psychologists train PhD clinical students who learn both research on disorders and treatment, and also learn assessment and treatment so that they can become licensed clinical psychologists who can provide that treatment to clients at the end of their program. Our psychological science faculty train PhD researchers who focus on basic and applied questions, but outside of disorders and therapy, and who don't train to be clinical psychologists who work with patients, but instead mostly researchers, academics, and professors. Our undergraduate psychology majors have the chance to work with these faculty and graduate students on their research. Our students have the opportunity to conduct research projects with faculty from start to finish. You can find out more about the research that we do at UMaine in the research module, which you should go ahead and start right away. Most people with training in psychology don't work right within the field of psychology. Psychology is a science that can prepare you for all sorts of different careers. Someone with good training in psychology is inquisitive, trained in research methods that can be applied to answer all sorts of complicated questions, a critical consumer of research and of data, and they understand something about how humans think, feel, and behave. In traditional business world, training in psychology makes for fantastic business leaders, marketing and advertising specialists, human resources and organizational managers. It prepares people interested in public service, like city and state employees, or those who want to work in criminal justice or social work or education, or even people who want to run for public office, from city hall to national office. Training in psychology produces people with adaptive skills that can be applied to all sorts of important social problems. Those of you who are psych majors will work with me in 245 in research methods, and we'll practice some of those skills by picking a social problem that you care about and studying it carefully across a whole semester. Just off the top of my head, a few students that I've worked with closely are now doing everything from working as a manager in a Fortune 500 healthcare company, managing a smoking cessation research lab in North Carolina, directing student leadership opportunities at a major university in Texas, working as behavioral health professionals, working for the American Heart Association, just tons of other things. There are loads of possibilities for people with good training in psychology, which you can get right here in this program.